Are you feeling like you're not understood in your relationship?
By the end of this video, you're going to have a blueprint that's going to help you successfully navigate through really challenging conversations. There's some common mistakes, I think, isn't there, in any disagreement, any argument, and maybe some of these things look, you resonate with them, or they look kind of familiar. An example of this is pointing fingers at other people. If we're feeling a bit hurt in a situation, we might push it back and go, well, if you've done this, you've done that, you haven't cleaned the dishes today, you haven't gone there, you said you were going to do this and you haven't done it.
You might also yell or swear or go completely silent and just think, well, they don't care how I feel, so I'm not going to bother telling them.
Maybe being really vague as well. Maybe you're not quite saying how you feel and what you mean. And when you're on the receiving end of that, maybe you're not quite sure where you stand. So you're treading on
Yeah.
eggshells and you're not really sure of what the person's actually trying to communicate. And that maybe drives you up further as well in terms of being slightly more aggressive, frustrated,
Yeah.
angry, sad, upset, all the different emotions. Either way, you're both missing each other.
Ultimately, if you're seeing someone that you care about upset or cross, you want to do something, and if you're not understanding what they're upset or cross about, that can make you really anxious.
I think that can feel really scary as well in that moment, that you're not feeling understood, or you feel like you're being misinterpreted. You're not being seen actually for how you're intending on coming across.
Now, luckily for you, there is an easy way to manage these conversations. The first thing, the most important thing, is timing.
Timing is really important. So the first step in our blueprint is a contracting question. So this contracting question is really, really important. As Alex says, timing is really, really key. Maybe you've just been at work all day and you've been pondering this conversation, this situation that's occurred for you, and you've had lots of time to mull it over. If you go straight in and start speaking to your partner about it, they're going to feel a bit off guard by it, and maybe then you're not going to get the response that you actually want or that wants to be met with. So in our blueprint, the contracting question and the timing is really important. Now, for us as an example, that looks something like, do you have headspace? That's our language and the way we communicate. Have you got time to check in about something?
It's really important that this is only used when you've got something that's been on your mind, that's bothering you, that you've been thinking about, and not just for the day-to-day stuff. If I'm asking Mark, do you have headspace? I am not asking, can we talk about who's doing the food shop next week?
Definitely not. I think that would completely devalue it, wouldn't it? It's a high value. The contracting question is really important. It needs to be respected by
Mhm.
both people, whatever language you choose, whatever that is, whether that's have you got time? Are we able to sit down and talk about this? It needs to
Mhm.
be something that distinguishes it away from other kind of questions, I
Yeah,
guess, is what we're saying, isn't it?
yeah.
So from that contracting question, when you say whatever you've chosen to your partner, now they've got autonomy over their answer. So if they say no, which they've got every right to say no, if they say no, then there needs to be a follow up of, okay, when are we going to make time for this? That's absolutely vital, because if you've got something that you've really thought about and you're having the courage to bring it up with the person that you're with, it's vital that that feels held and that feels safe and secure. So if someone says no, it's important to know that they're not rejecting you. They simply respect and value that question, what you want to talk about, i.e., your emotions and how you're feeling about something. So by making time for it, and setting a new time for it, sorry, that allows us then to respect that process.
And it would be so easy when you had been thinking about something all day or something that's upset you, something that has made you cross, that if that person says no, you think, God, they don't care. Why wouldn't they make time for me? It is so important to remember that that no means they care so much about what's going on for you that they want themselves to have the right headspace for it.
And that they're respecting themselves as well. I think that
Yeah,
can get overlooked, isn't it? It's vital that you're able to say no to something.
yeah. So once you've got that space to have that conversation, your person said, yep, I've got time, let's sit down, let's talk. Where do you go first, Mark?
So the first step is, I feel. This is a statement. We're communicating an emotion. So I feel sad. I feel angry. I feel upset. I feel hurt. I feel happy. It doesn't have to necessarily all be kind of emotions that
Yeah.
kind of indicate anything. Um,
I feel misunderstood.
I feel misunderstood. Yeah, we're communicating emotion with this. I feel. Next step is number two. So this is when. The when is the descriptive factor. We're describing the situation. So an example of this would be, I feel sad when. I come home to all the washing up that's not been done. Okay, so we're describing the situation. We're calling out the description based on the emotion. Number 3 is then because. We're given a reason. Now, most people kind of, when they hear a form of criticism, they want to understand, they want to know the reason of why you're feeling that way. So we're effectively communicating that with this because. So I feel sad when I come home and all the washing up hasn't been done because it makes me feel cluttered after a long day. Anything else you want to say on that one?
No.
Okay. So finally, step 4. This, I think, is arguably the hardest. I know whenever I'm working with clients around this, they always seem to struggle with this, but this is I need. Okay, so to effectively be able to communicate what we need. So I feel sad when I come home to all the washing up that hasn't been done because it makes me feel really cluttered after a long day at work, and I need you to wash up as you go along, please. It's a really clear kind of call to action that I need. And that's really hard to perhaps identify what it is. And I think one of the caveats for me, Alex, I think with this kind of description is it's really important that we own our stuff in there. We're not pointing fingers when we're doing that because otherwise we're going back to those previous behaviors that perhaps weren't particularly conducive.
Yeah.
We're explaining exactly kind of what's going on. Sorry, I cut you off.
The first step is not you make me feel, it is I feel.
I feel.
Because you could easily, in your example, have said, you make me feel sad when you don't wash up. I need you to do that because it makes me feel cluttered. That's a completely different conversation. That's straight back into that finger pointing, blaming me against you. And actually, I think most people, if they come home and the sink's full of washing up, probably feel a bit.
I mean, that's just a small example, isn't it, of a way of kind of articulating what's going on here. But I think if the way Alex just said that, then how do you feel hearing that? I know as you said that, I was thinking, oh, I feel a bit on the back foot then. I feel a bit defensive, and I'm more likely to come back with something that's not particularly positive, not necessarily in line with trying to resolve this and understand as well. I think that's a really important thing, and that's what this these four kind of phrases or sections of the sentence allow to communicate. It's that clear understanding. We're covering the emotion, we're covering the descriptive factor, the reason, and then finally the action that comes with it. So we're moving through those 4 steps.
That last part, that and I need, particularly if you're having big emotional conversations, our example is quite trivial. You can use this in any context. That I need bit is really hard. And I think it's something we are not taught to do from being really, really little. So please be gentle with yourselves as you're learning that. I know it's something that I continuously need to learn and relearn and explore by myself before I can take it to Mark.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's vital, Alex, what you've just said there. And I think having that resilience as well, that your needs might not always be met. But I think that's really important, isn't it, for effective communication, to have that resilience yourself going into this, to be able to communicate what you need and to be resilient, I use that word again, to the fact that someone might not meet those needs, but there needs to be a further conversation then that comes from that. So there's a couple of key points to this blueprint that we're putting together. So I think the first point for me is that all of these things that are spoken about are done in first person. We've got to own all of this ourselves. So in the example I gave about the washing up, I didn't say I feel really sad when I come home and you haven't done the washing up. I'm pointing the finger in that moment. I said when the washing up hasn't been done. So our use of language and how the words that we choose is really, really important, as well as our tone. We need to communicate really softly, in a clear way, in a way that we own all of that stuff. So it's I statements, as Alex has written.
The second key point is that timing is key. You cannot have these conversations in a constructive way when one person's head is not in it. And that's where that contracting question is really, really important.
Arguably, that would probably be one of the first key points, I think. The timing is vital for these conversations. There's no point having a really challenging conversation if a person's come out of a stressful work meeting, for example. They're not going to be, or the children suddenly need bathing or need feeding or dogs need walking. So the timing of that conversation is really, really important. The third key point is the I need. This is arguably one of the hardest points, to recognise what we need. I don't think we're necessarily taught from a young age to be able to identify what we need. We're never taught this at school. It's almost seen as you're being a problem child if you're saying, I need this, I need that. But to be able to identify our needs is a big part of a healthy relationship, because what we're actually communicating is what's going on for us and what we need from that situation. So I need is often the hardest part within this framework.
And I think it's really easy when you're not quite sure what you need to automatically make what you need in this blueprint someone else's actions. And I need you to not do that. And I need you to do that before I come home from work. And I need you to not use that tone when we're arguing. And actually, sometimes your I need is, and I need to go and learn how I manage myself in those conversations, or and I need us to find a compromise to this. And I guess that takes us to the fourth key point, which is you don't have to have it all figured out.
Yeah.
Your and I need can be, and I need us to have a conversation about it.
Or I'm not sure what I need. That's okay too. Maybe I just need a cuddle. Maybe I need some reassurance. It can be, it's okay, as Alex says, to not have it all figured out and to not know what you need. But can we own that and can we communicate that? That's the really vital part, I think, to this, is to call it out. That goes back to some of those earlier points that we were saying of some of those mistakes, is having these broad brushstrokes almost, saying things where there's an underlying meaning, and the other person then has to almost do this detective work to figure it out. And if they don't figure it out, a person can then hold them accountable, and we end up with this real kind of messy sort of situation where there's a lot not being said. And what we're trying to talk about here in this blueprint is very clearly communicating stuff from both sides, so that there's this middle ground where you understand each other and you connect.
Yeah. We do not take for granted that this is really difficult. We are not taught to talk about our feelings. We're taught to protect ourselves. It can feel really vulnerable to say, I'm feeling this when this happens because of this. And it can feel really hard to tell other people what you need, particularly when they might not be able to meet that. So you're putting yourself out there for rejection.
That feels vulnerable.
Yeah. But the alternative is having half conversations that don't address what's going on for you at all.
We hope you found this video useful. It's really important to point out that even though we're therapists, we're not your personal therapist. We're trying to equip you with some information that hopefully you find useful and you're able to apply to your relationship. So if you found this useful, please like,
Subscribe.
and follow us for more tips at The Couples Blueprint.
Wow, did you hear my neck crack?
I did.